Okay, this is a Cub Cadet tank, and this is my latest Saturday morning projects. This was brought to me without the deck on it, and the problem being is that the frame's broken on it. So just to put some perspective on it, I've kind of put some pieces here together. Just open up some of the stuff that shows where the frame's broken. Flip back this, and you can see right away the angle of the front section of this frame, how it's, these bars should be straight. And if I get a good look right down under here, right there, there's the good side. It's not completely separated. And when I look over here, this open, you can see it collapsing as I open it. Get a look right down in here, and you can see right here, this section is completely separated. You can see that from there, separated. And this is from the rough terrain, bouncing up and down at the camp where this thing gets used. So my job here is to disassemble this. I've already taken a few pieces off just so we can get a look and start to make a plan. So my next step is to strip out enough of the pieces so that I can decide what brackets or reinforcements I need to make. If you were just to simply weld this here, it would just break beside the weld. Wouldn't matter how good a welder you are. So anyway, I'll make a few video snaps as I go along, put it together. Maybe someone will find this interesting. Okay, so continuing on here, this is just the same morning. I've got this fairly stripped down now, and you can start to really see the failures here of this frame that's broken over there. And I just set this up here, just when they were trying to use this or even get it back into the shed after it broke, absolutely no strength left in it. Broken from both sides. Now, here's a piece that was broken I didn't realize was going to be broken, so one more thing to fix. Notice that it broke on both sides. This side here hasn't quite broken across the top, but it's clearly broken down across here. It's not as separated now because there's not as much weight on it with the stuff I've taken off. But it broke from the bottom and it worked its way up and across. Now the objective here would be to think about how can I fix this so that this repair outlasts the rest of the machine. Because if this machine's 12 years old now, if it broke again in 12 years, here, would the rest of the machine still be worth fixing? At that point, it'd be a 20 to 25-year-old machine, probably not. But the longer we can get out of a piece of equipment at the camp, the better. So, and in 20 years or 15 years, I don't think I want to fix it again. So I want to fix it right the first time. So I'm looking at some options here. Again, I don't want to have it, I don't want to fix it right. Like if I was just to weld it where the cracks were and put it back together, it would just simply crack beside it. Well, if I make a bracket and bracing and spread the force out, well, I don't want to just have it break in another place either. So I really got to consider what's it going to take to support this for 12 to 15 years, or just never break again. Not that I want the rest of the machine to fail, but that's, things fail with age. So anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it off for today. I know that I've got some thinking to do about what brackets or welding would need to take place to fix it, and we'll pick this up again next week. Picking up the project December the 10th. So I've done a little bit more disassembly here. I've taken off the fuel tanks. Probably not the first thing you noticed. Oop, hold that still. Just because when I get cutting, welding, and spark, it's just a bad idea, right? So I've taken off this bracket here as well. There's only one little tiny bit of weld holding that together. So I cut that off, and then I cut off the front section of the frame. So I've done a little bit of thinking about this in the last week about how I was going to fix this. And it was literally held together by, you can see here, all I did was cut right across here, and this front end came down just like that. And one thing that I guess it doesn't surprise me when you look at this about where the balance of this is that the balance is behind the wheel. So I had to stick a jack stand on the back to keep this thing from flipping over backwards when I was working on it here. So without the front end, this thing would flip over. So that weight distribution on there, you think about, it's got this weight on the back here. You can see that there's a big couple hunks of steel here to give it some weight. Actually take more weight off the front end. I guess that's so that it glides over the front. So you really, this thing is susceptible to flipping over backwards more than anything. So just something to remember if anybody watching this video, if you're using this lawnmower and you're going up a hill and you get some good traction, you could go over backwards. So the concept I'm working with right now is that this frame, this 2x2 steel frame, and I'd commented last week, if I just simply weld this, it's just going to crack right beside it. It's cracked in identical spots right in front of these brackets that come up from the bottom, and right behind where the frame is doubled up, and this piece of steel that carries or helps carry the weight of the table of the blades is a point where, that's the weakest point between those two, right? So you've got all the force. Can't see I'm waving my hand around here. You have all the force of the wheels and everything wiggling the frame back here, so you get this flexing going up and down here, and eventually, I guess it's not a surprise when you think about it, how it breaks there. So if I was to weld this, it's just simply going to break beside it because I haven't solved the problem. The flexibility between the most rigid part of this frame that's reinforced with this piece of steel, and then the point here where all the force comes up. So the only solution that we can do is to extend this, essentially extend this piece of reinforcement all the way to the back of this subframe back here that carries the axle. And that's what I plan to do here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a frame repair where I just take this piece here, I clean them all up, and I reconnect them by welding them, and then I'm going to rebuild with steel brackets. I'm going to extend this piece, going to weld them together, and then going to probably bolt it as well. I might just do bolt on. I haven't decided yet. We'll see how the welding goes, and then it'll transfer that, or it'll take the flexibility of this whole section, and it'll carry the weight of or it'll take the flexibility off this point. It'll spread that across that whole section. So I'll work on that today, and I might do a couple of updates as I'm doing the frame repair, just so you can see what I'm doing there. And then I'll take some more pictures or videos as I'm developing the brackets. So that's it for today's video, I think. Okay, so what are we doing over here today? So this is the third installment of this video where I'm fixing this frame. So as you can see here, the total separation, I'm starting to get things ready to put it back together. I don't know if you recall, but there was a crack across here, so I've welded that up down across both sides. I would say that, even though it looks good, that's not a particularly strong weld joint. But I deem that okay for the top section over here, because remember what we said about how this was flexing up and down, and it cracks started first at the bottom. So the real areas that we've got to focus on strengthening as we put this back together is the bottom. So my next step to do here is I'm actually going to cut out about a 1/4 inch on this side off across the bottom. I'm going to remove another 1/4 inch of material, probably straighten these out so they're fairly straight. And I'm going to put a little piece of steel on the inside of this square tube, so that when I'll start here, but I'll weld on the inside, then I'll weld on the outside. I'll do the same thing on the other side, so on the right side frame rail of this mower. And then when I put them together, I won't be able to weld here. I mean, this weld on here would just be to hold it in place. I'll weld across that, which will be 1 inch across. I'll have to fill it completely solid with weld, and I'll be welding it to that plate and weld it there. So now my joint will be strengthened as I weld across a greater area, and I'm not trying to get next to where this weakened, fractured, fatigued metal is, where it initially broke. If I simply weld this, it'll crack right beside it. And that's just to fix the frame rail. I think that probably a reasonable goal would be to say that when I finish welding down these sides, when I join this frame together and across the top, across the bottom, I probably have reasonably between 70 to 80% of the original frame strength. And I'm going to tell you, that simply won't do for long-term repair. When, remember, I said the goal of this was to make it last, never break again, regardless of how it gets used. So of course the next step would be to reinforce it using this steel that I've got down here and make brackets. And I'm not going to get into today about how I'm going to make those brackets to spread that force out. I think I detailed some of that already, but I have the plans in mind to do that. So anyway, that's the end of today's installment. I'm going to get to work and get that piece installed in the inside of the frame rail. Okay, check it out. I think this is the fourth video I've made of what we're up to here. And where I had left off before, I was get this steel mounted here to hold things straight, and I was getting ready to weld. So I've decided that when I weld these, just having this weld right along this edge wasn't going to be enough. So I drilled some holes back here, and I'm going to plug weld these. And like I drilled right down through to the metal piece that spans across there. I'll draw this back a little closer together, and then I'll weld. So we'll have this surface across here, and then down through the middle on both sides. And I'll do the same thing for the bottom when I get that far. The other thing I've done is I've taken these brackets, had them welded. So here's the bracket from the other side. I haven't put this in yet, just set that there so you can see it. Welded this piece on, so that's going to hold that bar on the other side. See, this side's done here. And across here on the back, this is going to bolt onto, I don't know if you can see that down there, this section across there. I'll drill holes in across there. So the idea being is that the force will get spread out across this section here, which mounts the frame to the rear carriage section quite a bit more solid. And then when I finish connecting it across up here, we'll span that whole gap across there. We won't be using or leaning on that section of square tubular frame as much as it was when it was manufactured. So today's goal is to get this welded, bring this together, clamp it up, get it welded down across here, do the plug welding on both sides. Then I'll remove this bracket again, just take the clamp off, and I'm going to turn this thing upside down, and I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. I'll weld this, I'll weld down this side, which I can't get right now because the steel's there. Then I'll dress it up, and I'll get it ready to put back together. So that'll be the next segment. Maybe when I have this thing flipped upside down, I'll make another quick little video. You can see the update. Okay, check it out here. I've got 75% of the welding done here. The braces have been removed for the moment. There's no jack stands under it. It's supported on its own weight. You can see the welding done here, up and down. That's how I plug welded it, filled them in. And you can see there's a bit of a rise above here for some thickening. So you think about how this metal is now. Underneath you've got that strap with the plug welds. And then on top here where the crack was, it's been welded with several passes. And then I've smoothed it off because I've got that channeling and everything I have to get around it. So, you know, you wouldn't see a weld like this because, you know, I've welded it and I've cleaned it up so I can get my channel on here nice and clean. So that's where I'm at right now. So the next step here, same thing on the other side obviously. Next step here is to flip this thing up on end so I can do the same to the bottom. So there's not a lot of welding left for that. Once I get the bottom done, I can put it back down. I can weld this piece here that sits on here, the one that's been removed. You might have noticed I didn't grind off the broken pieces on either side here. Well, that's to help me locate the steel when I put it back together. So anyway, next step, flip it up on end. Okay, picking up again. I got some really bad news here. So my phone went dead and I didn't take any videos as I went along. I just kept working, but let me show you where I'm at now. So yeah, I've got it lifted up in the air. You can see some of my other stuff in the shop, my other toys I'd like to play with eventually. Welds are all done on the top. You'd seen that before. So we go around here to the bottom. And we just check it out here. So we've done our welds completely. It was plug welded, so I drilled those. I actually notched this side because I couldn't get a drill up in here because it's just too tight. And I welded a irregular shape and then filled it up down to that plate that I had put in there below that you saw before. Same thing on this side. This side was two plugs here, and then across. So I actually welded up kind of nice. I've fit the pieces on here and I've drilled the holes. that we're gonna bolt those pieces in with. So the good news is I'm on to completeness now of the welding and assembly. So the assembly I've got over here, I've got those brackets. I've given them a shot of primer, and I'll assemble them just like that. I won't bother painting them until I put them all together, and then I'll paint it all at once. So it'll be all black when it's done. So anyway, that's the latest I'm up to here now. The only welding I have left to do now would be to put this piece, this bracket on that goes across there into the seat. And maybe when I fit these brackets, I might do some more welding. We'll see what they look like and how I think the strength is coming along. Remember, my goal of the welding was to get 80% strength of what was there before originally, and then increase the strength of it by adding the bracket and eliminating the stress rise area by connecting past this area where you have this other bracket that's been welded on the frame. You can't see where I'm pointing, there we go, down here and then down to here. So in the end, I'm hoping to achieve more than 100% of the strength, maybe 150 to 170% of the original strength that it had before. And I believe that's the range I have to get this thing to last for the rest of its useful life. Okay, stay tuned for the next installment. Okay, different week now. I'm gonna pick this little project up again. I've had it on the side with a couple other things on the go. So I've got my steel here all in place, ready to bolt in. I've got it clamped down, so I'm gonna drill some holes and put some bolts in it. So next time you see this, it should have some bolts in it. And this will completely box the rails. On the bottom, I haven't decided yet, but I'm probably gonna, on the bottom at least, make a joint there by welding it. We'll see what I think when we get that far. Like I said, don't want to have to go through this again, so, or don't want it to ever break again. This is a lot of work. So I'm going to carry on with that part of the task and update you again later. Okay, let's check it out. A couple things have happened here since we did. First of all, I get this tire on. So new rubber, all greased up. The bearing is no longer dry. I did the undercarriage welding that I was speaking about before. It's kind of dark, but let's see. I guess you could see here, I welded here, across there, and across down here. So those are the three places I welded. Same thing other side, and then get a little bit of splash of black paint. So next thing is I can put this thing down on the floor, and I can go on to final assembly. Okay, now check it out. I got it back on the ground here. So the next step here, if you recall, was, oops, shook you around there, was this piece here. So this is not attached anymore. This is where the original cracks, this is where the original crack started, was down here. I had cut off. This side was actually loose, and that side I had to cut off with a grinder. So now what I'm going to do is trim these up a little bit to allow for this thickness, clean this edge up, and I'll do a weld across here and across here on both sides using this battery box here to set the distance. And I hadn't originally cut it at the beginning because, or hadn't ground off those welds for location purposes, but I decided that the battery box was good enough to locate it. So that's good. So we'll do that next. All right, let's check it out. So I get the motor deck on, the flat tire fixed, and if we go down here, let's check out the frame repair job. And you can see the new piece of steel in there, nice shiny black. Of course, that's covering the frame that was repaired, so you cannot actually see the repair, it's covered. Same thing on the other side. I don't know if you can remember me showing you a shot down through here. You can see the frame separated, but you can see my repair brackets down there. So this thing's all back together. You see I put a tether on the key so it doesn't go missing. So anybody looking for the key, it'll be out of the ignition, but it'll probably be just hanging down where people can't see it easily. Mower's fully serviced. Filters all changed, deck and everything done. So guess what? This thing's ready to work. Actually, just short of one thing is that the battery is shot. I charged it and I tried to start it. It's like, nah, not gonna happen. So I actually haven't had it really running yet. I'll have to get a battery for it. So next shot you'll see of this, it's gonna be at the camp. And maybe I'll get somebody to mow the grass for me. Because I don't want to actually cut the grass, I just fix the mower. See ya.